turned
Come
over.
on.
7:59, 8 o'clock. Come on, this is probably one of my most favorite things to do. Look straight into the camera. Out of all the people that are going to be watching tonight, maybe even all the ones that are going to be watching later, we're at LeadStep Online here for you and with you guys. We just got to say a really big thank you. Thomas, thank you
Yes.
so much for what you guys do.
Thank you guys so much. And we would love if you guys could be here. I think it was the coolest thing, Ryan, was having everyone together last month just to be together, celebrate some time as leaders, all growing deeper and closer in those calls and those. Honestly, it's difficult to be a leader, which is one of the reasons this is a great resource. So again, we're so thankful you're joining us tonight. Hey, do me a favor. Go ahead and log on.
Log on.
This way you can jump into the chat. You can start talking about what Pastor Ryan will be sharing tonight, as well as putting any questions or topics you have. It even has this really cool option. You can send out invites directly from the login page. Because it's not too late to have your friends and family and other leaders in your community join us. So go ahead and forward those invites out. Again, it's going to be on the right side. If the screen's maximized, you actually have to minimize it to log in. But yeah, go ahead and do that so you can be a part of the chat.
It's up there. It's right up there. Man, that's a really good point. Leadership sometimes can be very isolating. And so we like to do this online so that we can come to you in the comfort of your own home. But we also do a LeadStep in-house 3, maybe 4 times a year. And so those are the moments where we do a lot more community, where you get to see the other leaders in our city, in our church, and we come together, love on each other. One of the most important points is we eat together. Let's just pause for a good agreement right there. But let's just dive right in. Come on, tonight we're talking about work. We're talking about you as an employer, you as an employee. We could talk about your work as it is, maybe not as a 9 to 5. Whatever your work, your hands find to do, that's your work. Your place of influence is your work. Your work could be your kids. It could be a stay-at-home mom, stay-at-home dad. But whatever it is, I want to put you in the context of looking at this thing and really finding out how can we connect character and competency. How can we get better at what we do with who we are? So when we think about those particular items, character and competency, I know there's some really big depth that go to both of them. There's exhaustive information on the skill. We're not really going to focus on that tonight because there are some companies out there in the secular arena that do a really great job at working on and better you're improving, training, and developing your skill. We're not going to focus on that. We're going to focus on character. But I do want to say this. Every single company in the entire world, when they talk about the variables that they can hone down into, the variables that are the most important to them, every company has 2 main variables, 2 main aspects. And those are people and product. People and product. It could be the staff or it could be the ones that you serve. Whatever it is, people have to be massively important. If you've been with our church forever, for quite some time, you probably heard us say that if you here are working, your employer or an employee, we want you to just redefine mentally that you are in the service arena. No matter what you do and work, we want just to kind of redefine this idea to focus on people over the product so that the product can actually be sold really, really well. And when we talk about leadership, there's so much, because that's like a really hot topic right now all over the world. And what I want to say is we don't need to have more leaders lead. We don't just need an increased amount of leaders, just more development, quicker leadership tracks, and turn them over faster. What we need is great people to actually lead. And there's a big difference. We don't need necessarily a quantity. We don't need hundreds and hundreds of leaders. What we need are fewer leaders that are just really, really good people, who they are, their character, and then what they're good at as well. Let me just give you some context for this particular idea of moving through. 3 John chapter 2. 3 John chapter 2. This is really the only scripture that I'm going to kind of throw out to you tonight, but I hope it kind of paves the way for what it is that we're going to be looking at tonight. It's up on the screen if you don't have your Bibles, no big deal. Check it out. This is what it says. John is writing to you, and he loves you, and he calls you this. Beloved, I pray that all may go well with you. That's the first facet. He prays that everything else around you, everything that you're linked to, everything that your hands find to do, I pray that that may go well with you. Listen, if your friends are not praying that blessing over you, you need to find some new friends. Thomas, I hope you pray this over my life. I pray that all may go well with Ryan. And then the second installment of that, he says that I pray that all may go well with you and that you may be in good health. Because, the fact is, you may not be in good health. You're probably not going to have the things around you go very well. But if you are in good health, you can enjoy the things around you. See how they're connected? Now, I love this because he brings it to a head. He says right here, as it goes well with your soul. So when we're talking about the subject of leadership, we're talking about the subject of work, you really need to scope through this 3 John 2 idea to say, the condition of your soul, your relationship with God, the character that he's developing within you is going to pour out in your work. It is. It just is. And that's what I want to talk about tonight and really focus in on some of the people that are at our church that can really just take their next step in their leadership to say, hey, how can I get better at my skill? I first have to let God do a better job working in this thing. Last time I checked, he was amazing at building people. And if you let him build you up, then you're gonna see the aftermath and the byproduct of you building other things up and really just kind of seeing the effects of that. And so really, when we talk about this idea, we talk about it as an individual level. We talk about it as a character, competency in the employer or in the employee. But if you see 1 or 2 people in a company change and they're just joyful and they exude this particular, this topic of character, you're going to see it duplicate and really change the culture. And the culture is really something that honestly, Thomas, every single company has a culture. Healthy or not, you can walk into companies and just see the culture that they have. They're a part of it.
That's 100% correct. Whether you want to acknowledge it or not, you're actually, as a leader, are responsible for the culture in your organization. So it's up to you. You have an opportunity before you. You can lead it for the best or lead it for the worst.
Yeah. And even if you're not in charge, even if you don't have a title, you can help install a healthy culture.
That's right.
And really what it comes down to is this particular topic. It has to start with you as a person because you can't point the finger. You got to start with you as a person. Whether that be top down or just bottom up, doesn't matter. You can change the culture. Now, I find this fascinating. Found an article not so long ago about Forbes magazine did an article on leadership, and the specific topic was 14 bad habits that might cost you your job. 14 bad habits that might cost you your job. Now, I'm not going to exhaust these. We're not going to go through 14. I just want to pull out 3 of them, talk about 3 of them tonight. And I really want to not just talk about them as behavior or as bad work ethics. I really want to do is talk about them, how the skill and the outpouring of these bad habits are really just the development of your character. They're really just like an expression of who you are. So we're going to kind of dive into those. Thomas, you ready?
I love it. Let's go.
All right, here's the article. 3 bad habits. First one, procrastination. We're diving right in. We're not even like hitting it on the shallow end. We're not even beating around the bush. Procrastination is whenever we as individuals push things off. We push responsibilities off, and we actually create work, more pressure in our work for ourselves. We create more pressure in the work that we do in our team because maybe we're collaborating and my project is being pushed off and I don't get it done until the last minute. That puts pressure on me and also everybody else. And not to mention, there's no margin. So likely your procrastination is just allowing you just to do your job, just to skim by, just to turn something in on the deadline. What would happen if you push that procrastination off and say, man, I'm going to put my stuff in early. And instead of putting pressure on you, you can actually chip away small increments, blocked time that you can get these things done. So then you can turn it in early. Another idea that actually goes to the opposite of procrastination is you're allowed to actually collaborate. I love this idea because I'm a big team player. I think we're better together. And so when let's say that I was working on a project, but I just said, man, I'm going to get it done early, a day, a week, whatever. I'm going to go grab Thomas and say, Thomas, can you look at this project? Or you're with me on this project. Can you help me? Or your strength is really going to help my deficiency. Will you help me make this better? Will you help me as a team member to actually do a little bit better job? Procrastination doesn't allow any of that. It doesn't allow anybody else to get involved in that stuff.
No, it doesn't. And honestly, some studies have shown people operate pretty well under stress, but there's that level, and I know we've all been there before, where the stress is way beyond what we would operate well under.
Yeah.
And having that little bit of leeway, that wiggle room, 1,000 times easier to
Yeah.
get things done.
Yeah. And so one of the other things that I want to talk about is instead of procrastinating and putting the pressure on you and your team, if you put a little margin in there and get things done early, creativity actually gets sparked. Innovation actually happens. And God so loves to create through you new ideas. And honestly, and I want to talk about creativity real quick because I think I lost some of you. I don't talk about creativity in like a music, poetry, the artsy. I'm talking about creativity as in like creative thinking, thinking outside the box, being innovative, problem solving. That's the kind of creativity that I want to be involved in, not just here in the church, but outside in our city, every single business that we have, because there are some situations that you've never been in before that you just need to think creatively. You need to go back and just stretch yourself out, look at the 30,000-foot view and say, how can we solve this problem that's not even here yet? That's thinking creatively. Procrastination doesn't even do that. Now, let me talk about this particular idea. When it comes down to the connection between competency and character, we can't just say, hey, this guy procrastinates, so we need to put policies in for you to turn your stuff in early or allow for team building. The rule is you have to collaborate. You can't just like parenting, you can't just allow behavior modification. You can't just go across as an employer and just scrape off the symptoms of the issue. What you're really looking at is a character deficiency, and there could be just maybe a disrespect towards everybody else's time, and the only time sensitivity is just your own. Whatever it is, conversations can really help spur this up. You've got an employee or a coworker that is always procrastinating, and it's really making you have some tension, worry, anxiety, or maybe even the quality of your stuff to decrease. That's when you need to start that conversation up and say, hey, how can we actually get through this early? You get down to the character of it, you get down to the source of it, the core, and then you can actually move past some of these bad habits, like, for instance, the procrastination.
That's so true, Ryan. You know, Os Guinness wrote in his book, When No One Sees, he basically defined character as that exact thing. And everyone wants to follow a leader with character, but character is who you are when no one sees. It really has to do a lot with the behind the scenes, who you actually are.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting. So you're saying basically if you can't just go after competency. If you sacrifice character, it also hurts the competency in the organization.
Yeah, because one of the things that we've also talked about too and looked at is the fact that I could do my job. I could be really, really good at my talent, at my skill, but at the same time, you're also going to have those situations where you really need to think outside the orthodox. I got a problem in situation, or I have a customer that's coming to me that I've never really handled this before. Character is going to outweigh what your position description tells you. Character is going to give you insight on a situation because maybe you know people better than you know your policies. And that's the kind of thinking that you want in your employees. They're just not boxed in to say, I know how to follow steps 1 through 10, but you want somebody who respects issues 1 through 10 and they follow suit, but when given the circumstances, and there will be a lot of them, they can think on their toes. They've got street savvy. They are common sense smart. It's the difference, not necessarily difference, let me just say it like this. It's the combination between IQ and EQ. It's knowing the reading of the room and knowing what's going on and the tension, knowing how to read people, but also knowing how to read the situation. Both are massively important. All right, let's move on. This is good. Second one, I'm only mentioning 3. Second one is cutting corners. So out of 14 bad habits that Forbes did, one of the other ones was cutting corners. It starts really, really small. We all cut corners just to kind of get by, to put our project in. Or it could be just let me just take a couple pieces of copy paper, not a big idea, totally innocent. But that thing, when it goes unchecked, cutting corners starts at taking papers home, taking office supplies home, and then all of a sudden it bursts into stealing money, stealing time, extending your hours on time cards, and then all of a sudden you get to the point where you get caught and you have this idea going, I have no idea how it went that far this quickly. And when we really look at it, that has little to do with work ethic. It has little to do with policies. Because let's say you catch the person early. If the cutting corner is not going to be done in this area, it might be done in another. But if your company, your coworkers, or as an employer, you can start looking at your employees and actually start developing character. You're going to actually preclude the problem way before they even get there. And you're going to find that they're going to be doing a great and fantastic job of going the second mile, looking at things that they're not on their position description. I love the Jesus theme. He says, Thomas, if anybody goes and says, hey, I need you to, like the Roman citizens at that time, I need you to carry my pack, and they were obligated to do so. I need you to carry my pack for 1 mile. So no one would really bat an eye. They'd be like, okay, you told me to do it, I'm going to do it. That's your job. That is literally your duty. But Jesus says, what I want you to do is go to second mile. And I love that phrase because, man, that can be applied in every aspect of our life. So if I get a solution to say, okay, I've got something that I'm supposed to do. My boss told me. Instead of doing that, I'm going to go the extra mile. I'm going to go above and beyond and blow out some expectations.
I love it. And I mean, who doesn't want employees that do this? I can't imagine a single person. Hope you're taking some great notes, because going the second mile, it totally changes the environment, going back to the topic about culture. And it's what you want to see when you're going somewhere.
Good.
Especially you start into a business. If you're going to put your money towards something, you want to get the best bang for your buck.
Yeah. And it's also a stewardship theme too, because, as leaders and as managers, CEOs, employers, they're looking at their employees to find out who is going a second mile, who does consider this not just to be a job. And God, most importantly, is also looking over you to find where the character is being expressed. Like if it happens in private, fantastic, but it's also great when it happens in public at work that you can go the second mile, do things when nobody else is looking. Clean up areas that nobody else wants to clean, but all of a sudden they keep coming in that area and say, somebody is cleaning up this area. Somebody is exceeding my expectation. And it's great when your boss needs to really move around and figure out from the staff who is doing such a fantastic job, because I just want to give them credit. I mean, it's like secret giving. Jesus was all into secret giving, secret praying, secret fasting. And I love it because when we do things in secret, God knows. But there's also something that's developed inside of us that it really displays who I'm doing it for.
That's so good. It goes back to that relationship stuff. I know when I worked in a local restaurant around here, there would be so many times where that crumb would somehow get swept, and you would see it go right underneath the table where no one's going to find it there.
Yeah.
But the thing is, there's that part of relationship with God where it's like, but he knows.
Yeah.
And I'm not working for my boss or my manager. I'm working for him.
That's good.
But it goes back to the thing you want to see in your employees, which is, it's honestly that kind of a generous spirit, isn't it?
Yeah. That's so good. Which is also the opposite of negativity. And this is the last one we're going to hit on. And I'm not going to do it for very long because you have been in that season where you've just been negative. You've had employees that have been negative. Negativity can honestly change the atmosphere so quickly. And it has this vacuum effect. One person is negative, it just sucks the life out of the entire room. You're like, I don't know how this happened, but our business meeting got zapped like this. Your conference table, all your staff comes in a room, 2 people are negative, and it weighs down the entire crew. And so I'm not saying or suggesting that you guys should just go around just singing some positive music and just be positive all the time. But you guys we all need to be aware, especially in the work environment, what negativity actually does. It's poor body language. It's negative tone. It's not just content. You can share content and truth, but it's the way you do this. But really what happens is it bleeds through the culture and produces something that's really just it's like a cancer. It's just like negativity. And so really what you can do is say, okay, you know what? There's going to be a policy. You got to come to work joyful. Just put signs up all over. That's only going to work for 5 minutes. Or you can actually develop the people's character and say, hey, things are going to be good and things are going to be bad. You're going to have off days, you're going to have on days. No matter what it is, we need to be faithful. We need to have that stability. We need to have a consistency to us. That we can show our emotions, but there's a time and a place to do it. And we don't need to necessarily suck the life out of the entire crew just because that one guy is having a bad day. So again, come on, we look at these and we're not just looking at competencies and skills. We're not just looking at aspects that could be bad habits, because these things are all in everyone's business, but they could dominate the business because the character is actually not being developed. So we're really just trying to get into the connection between character and competency so that we can have a healthy culture that you, right where you work, right in your place of influence, can see. All right, so really, really quickly, let's go over 2 key characteristics for a positive culture. Employees, employers, doesn't matter what your status, what your position. I just want to go over two. There's a million different you can go over. I just want to go two because I think they encompass a whole bunch. So the first one, you ready for this?
Come on, bring it, Ryan.
Two key characteristics. These are not me. These are not mine. So you say bring it, but these are not mine. I'm just saying it. Generosity is one. Listen, there's a true fact that if your employees or your employer can be so incredibly generous, like they're constantly giving, there's one true fact about that person, that they consume information. They're learners. Like they take as much as they can. They want to pour out into the ones below them or around them. You have to know the ones that pour their life out get consumed with a lot of stuff. So just take for instance, if you see 1 ounce of generosity with their finances, they probably have finances coming in. If they have been giving generosity with their words, if they're a person of encouragement, I promise you they have been listening to consistently very encouraging things. And what we have to look at is not just what comes out of our attitude. It's not just what comes out of our words. It's not just what comes out of our pocketbooks. It's not just what comes out with our work ethic. It's what we're putting in. Because everything that we put in, at some point in time, is going to come out. So when we talk about generosity, you want some people on your staff, on your team, that are just incredibly generous. Generous in giving out smiles. I mean, let me just get really simple. Joy can be a very contagious thing. I mean, it is crazy how people can just be cordial to one another, and that gets picked up just like negativity does. And so when you look at these are small things, really small things, but small things actually get built up to be bigger things. Generosity is actually something that everybody wants to grab a hold of. Really quick story. The cafe here on Sunday, they did a pay it forward. We literally just heard about this in our staff meeting today, that somebody was like, hey, I want to pay for the couple people ahead of me. And then the next person that came said, I want to do the same thing. They were being generous. I think it was like 2 or 3, maybe even 5, maybe even $10. I mean, it wasn't that much money, but it was the concept of being generous for the next person and the next person and the next person. I can't remember how many times it went, but right here in the cafe, it happened for a stretch of like maybe 10 people. That's exciting. That's contagious.
It is, that generosity. We've seen it time and time again out in the city, too, when we had our pay it back for the...
Yeah.
When we had people go into the city and kind of make
reverse offering.
The reverse offering, that's the word.
Yeah.
And it would go on for a long time, like McDonald's drive-through, Wendy drive-through,
right.
Starbucks.
Right. Yeah.
People's contagious when they're giving love to, and it really goes back to the relationship when you have with God. It's like, you really can't be generous unless you realize how much generosity has been given to you.
Yeah. Imagine what would happen, not just in the city, but in your work culture. I mean, if you just start to do that, trust would be built. I'm telling you, unity would happen so fast. And this is an amazing thing. Quick story just about this generosity idea. I remember reading a story of a bookstore. Some guy came into the bookstore and he said, hey, I'm looking for this particular book. They looked it up. There's a really big company. They looked the book up and they said, you know what? He looked on the screen and he was looking it up and he recognized on the screen that they didn't have the book. But what he did was amazing. He looked at the customer and he said, hey, I'm going to have that gift wrapped for you in about 15 minutes. Can you do me a favor? Can you browse around here? We have a coffee shop just right there. Why don't you go get you some coffee, hang out, come back here in 15 minutes, and I'll have your book, and it's going to be gift wrapped. Now, what he didn't tell the customer, the guy asking for his book, that they didn't have it. Those words never came out of his mouth. The moment that guy left, he got somebody to take his post, take his place, and he left to go down the street. Now, this is amazing. He left to go down the street. The company purchased the book at retail. That was like $20. They purchased the book at retail. They brought it back, gift wrapped it. 15 minutes later, the guy comes back and he says, here's your book, $20. They didn't make any money. Their company on that one book didn't make any money. But you know what they did do? They were so completely generous with extending what they wanted, which is people over the product. At that point in time, they weren't just a bookstore. They were a service industry. And that's the kind of stuff that we were like, gosh, what would happen if that was just be totally contagious in your work environment to say, how about we treat people honestly? I know we're just going back to simplicity, but how about we treat people like we would want to be treated, like kings and queens, not arrogantly, not pridefully, but just who we are. We are royalty. And the fact is, we don't have to be Christians to be royalty. God put the image of you inside of every single person that comes up to you, whether they're loving or whether they're disrespectful, whether they're honoring to you or not. What if we were to go the extra mile and just love on people like the guy did at the bookstore? I love this because when you look at this, this is just an act of generosity, of time, of compassion, of money. I mean, it just goes on different levels to say the service was actually above the actual product. And we need to get to that. We need to get to that.
Yeah, I can just take a guess and wonder which bookstore that guy chose next time he needed a book.
Yeah, boom. See, great point. I love it. All right, last one I want to talk about. I'm going to leave you with a couple practical tools. This last one is two key characteristics. One, generosity. Second one is humility. Humility goes a long way, and it's nothing that we can actually go and say that we have. It's not like a title that we can fashion. It's not a banner that we wave. The moment that we do, we've lost the banner. If humility is ever an award, the moment that you put it on and show it to people, you lose that award. Just that's the way it works. But it's the idea of, I love the way Jesus does it. He thinks of other people more interesting. He invests in other people, more encouraging to be others than himself. Simple words, I didn't come to be served, but actually to serve other people. When you find your interest more geared towards the person in front of you than just to be heard in the conversation, you're making progress. And when we talk about these, I love the idea of humility because as a leader, as a person in the workplace, it really allows you to do two things. One is to hone in on who you are. Humility really needs to be owned with the idea of your identity. If you're insecure, the humble idea is never going to come out. You're not really going to look out for somebody else because you're looking out for you. If you're insecure in who you are, pride is really going to have its way in conversation and picking forth of how you're being promoted and looked at, etc. It goes a long way. But humility is actually just the operation of who we are, and it comes out in the way that we handle situations, the way that we converse with other people. And it's amazing because when we get to that particular situation, it's very freeing to allow God to do his work so that we can be humble, we can love on other people, put them first, put their needs above ours, serve them, and allow just a real culture of generosity and humility to be brought into the place. I want to characterize this in one quick story. I remember a really high-end CEO that he interviewed every single person that he had for his company. He personally, at one point in time, would interview for their companies, big companies. So you can imagine lots of hires going on all the time. I call him bigwig CEO because I'm sure this guy had a whole lot to do. And going through the HR hiring process was not supposed to be one of them. But he would make it a point to go out to lunch with every single hire before they actually got on his team. And I love this because he goes, there was so much in the conversation. They had questions about the profits of their company. They were wondering how the back end worked, how they were so successful, some of the secrets to their company, internal processes, structures, all that good stuff. Questions would flow. He would actually have questions as well for the ones that were actually being interviewed. But he says this, and this is really what stuck out to me. He said there's one key characteristic that I would look at whenever I was having lunch with this person. And it was one variable, one thing that he would look at above any other thing that he asked, any other answer that they would provide. It was this one thing: how they interacted with the wait staff. I love that. So you're talking like probably six-figure income kind of guy, hiring for some people inside of his company. And the one thing that he would do out to lunch with these people is just watch how they would interact with the wait staff. And so here you have a guy who probably doesn't even need to be in the interview, could probably go at like some super nice restaurant, but he's probably just at a normal restaurant that have a wait staff. And here's what he would do, and I remember hearing this. Before the wait staff would come up, he would get water and start to take a drink, so he would force the other guy to interact with the wait staff. Or he would take a bite out of his food and be like, you go ahead, so he could see them interact. What do you want to drink? What do you want to eat? How's the food? Do you guys need anything? Checking up on you, refills on water. all those occasions in which your waitstaff came over and interacted at the table, every single one of them, he would shut down and let the other guy interact. And he would take note on that one idea. Because seemingly, when you're out to dinner, out to lunch, the person that's waiting on you is below you. That's unfortunately the mentality that too many of us have. But what he wanted to see is if this person that's sitting right across him actually had a dose of humility. And if they did, they would see it in play with the interaction with the wait staff. And that's always stuck out to me. So now I always want to be like, I want to do all the hiring and I want to take somebody out just to stir that process up. I've never done it, but I love the idea and I hope somebody out there takes it, because that's really a test of, hey, does this person in front of me before the hire or as an employee actually have a little bit of humility?
I love that, Ryan. One of the great things too about humility, a great leader, Melissa Jones, if you don't know her, you should get to know her. She said that as you grow in leadership, you need to have humility because humility will protect you.
It's good.
And if you look at those levels of leadership, which we have here, talking here about grace quite often, it's so important to recognize that if you don't have the humility for that next tier of leadership, then you honestly shouldn't be going there. It's actually worse for you to do so.
Yeah, that's good. And so really what we're looking at is we are looking for not more people to lead, but great people to be developed so they can lead. We don't necessarily need this process that we're talking about. We don't need more people to actually do the leading. What we really need is for character to be developed and for great people to actually be trained, loved on, and built up right inside of your company. And so, one of the things that I want to just have as a caveat in our conversation is what we're talking about is not perfection. What we're talking about is not some standard that only Jesus, if he was here, could actually uphold. We're talking about not perfection, but progression. What you're looking for in your employees, what your employees are looking at for you, is not perfection, but progression. They want to see us take the next step. We want to be better at what they do. As individuals, at the work that we do, we want to actually get better at our skill, at our craft, at our trade. And to do that, we actually have to be willing, generous, humble, transparent, open, and allow God to do his process in our character so that we can actually start taking steps to get better. If not, we're just going to get in a rut. We're going to find us just picking up a paycheck. It's going to be a Monday through Friday job, and we're just going to go through the mundane. Instead, what we really need to do is stir up the thought process. Let God do his work so that we can do our work. So both of them start to progress. Both of them start to progress. Let me give you a tool. And this tool we've been using here at Grace for a little bit, and it's really our levels of leadership. So if you're looking for people to take their next step, how do they progress? You guys can use, as a company, you guys can use this tool. We can give you all the material that we have, but let me just show you. Before you can have anybody lead a company, lead a staff meeting, you have to first start right at the top. You have to allow them to lead themselves. Are they encouraging themselves? Have they actually picked themselves up out of a rut? Have they gotten themselves out of situations? Can they lead themselves? You talk about 3 John 2. He says, I pray that all may go well with you as you're in good health, as it goes well with your soul. So the progress of leading yourself could really start with just hygiene. What you wear, how you present yourself, has to do with the condition of your soul. And so really the idea of extension, man, you're not really going to have great leaders to produce other leaders around you until you actually go through that work yourself. So lead yourself. The next one, if you want to show them, is lead one other person. This is a big step. Okay, I've self-talked, but how can I actually motivate you? That's a really big step. Leading a group, that could be leading a meeting. That could be leading a staff. That could be leading 2 or 3 people. Whatever it is, if it's an employee thing, it could honestly just be a seasonal. Could be a project thing. I'm leading a group just because we're really heading hard in the springtime. Really, our company hits it hard. Maybe you're in the taxes, so you need a team that you're allowed to run because maybe you're a CFO, right? You just all you do is finances. Maybe you're just into the taxes, and that's your heavy season. Maybe it's seasonal. And then the next one is leading a leader, leading a group, a multiplication. and then leading actually one individual that oversees an entire organization or an entire department, leading a particular leader that does this. This is a major shift in our mentality and how we lead, because we're not actually hands-on anymore. We're actually letting go of that direct contact when we lead leaders. And then leading leaders of groups, that's a big one. That's multiplication right there. And then the biggest one everybody gets to, and really just the biggest step up is this one right here, leading the culture of an organization. So again, this is the caveat, just to kind of give you some framework. I'm hoping that this is going to help you guys move into say, how can I allow my staff, our coworkers, and my employees to just take next steps? Well, maybe just give them this diagram, show them what next steps to take. Maybe you guys can write your own. We can give you ours, whatever the case may be, so you guys can progressively move down. I'm going to leave you this one last thought before we open it up into questions. So get them ready. Type them up. Thomas is on his computer as we speak, waiting for you guys. Let me leave you with this. 3 sentences, and I love it. Good leaders focus on their skill, their talent, or their job. Good leaders. Good leaders focus on what they're good at. Good leaders are natural at their talent. Good leaders say, you know what, I'm good at this, I'm going to stay in that lane. Good leaders focus on their skill, their talent, or their job. Great leaders focus on how that skill actually contributes and improves the company. You know, this is a good step. Great leaders, you go from good leaders say, this is what I'm good at. Great leaders, this is what I'm good at, to contribute that to the greater good. But the best leaders focus on how they can make others better. And I feel like when you get to this point, the best leaders focus on how they can make others better. That takes really, really good character. That takes really, really good competency. You got to be good at what you do. We do have to be really, really good. I feel like our quality and our excellence, whatever you're called to do, especially as a Christian, I'm not trying to put that standard on anybody else, but as a Christian, I believe that we should be doing things in our product with such excellence that it actually portrays the creator of excellence. It actually shows the God who does an excellent job at life. And he's restoring, he's redeeming, and I think honestly we've got a small part to play in the work where we put our hands in that restoration process of the entire world. And so you look at that, this is a good progression. Good leaders to great leaders to the best leaders focus on how they can make others better. It's not about perfection, it's about progression. Taking that next step in your character and also in your competency.
That's so good, Ryan. Man, I hope you guys are getting a lot out of this teaching. This is such good stuff for you all to have. And it's actually not too late to send any questions in, too. If you want to go ahead and you can still send them into the chat room, we're going to start asking some questions now. If you're ready, Ryan.
I am.
Come on. I love working for this guy. This guy's amazing.
I don't know about that.
So,
he's lying, but let's go.
First question. What happens if you skip from leading another to leading a leader and never lead a group?
Okay, put it up there. Let's go. Slide up our levels of leadership. So ask the question again. I'm a pretty visual guy.
Absolutely. What happens if you actually skip from leading another to leading a leader and skip the lead a group?
Yeah. Okay. So I would honestly think that when you skip any one of these, this isn't exhaustive by any means. This is something that we've put together, and it doesn't have to necessarily go in progression. But if you skip one or two of those, it might be a good thing. It might be a positional thing. You might go from, man, I don't know why, but I've been in a season of leading myself, and that's the first stage. And then all of a sudden, your boss, coworkers, other people around you just nominate you to say, this person would be really great at leading other leaders or leading a group, whatever. And you just skip a couple steps ahead. That's not actually a bad thing, but one of the things that you just need to be aware of is the steps that you do skip. What is that going to leave as a deficiency for you in the long haul? So you can make that up. You can progress pretty quickly. You can say, hey, I'm just going to make up the step and just kind of fast forward. It's like cramming for a test. Doesn't mean you're behind. Just means you got maybe a little bit more work to do. But there's a lot of these that you can skip, and I think it's totally healthy. But if you're trying to skip, maybe that's the motive question. If you're trying to skip them, which I know that's not where this question is coming from, but if you're trying to skip them, I think it's just a matter of, why do you want to lead? I mean, it's just like, do you just want people to look at you? You want people to hear you? Do you want people to watch you? Do you just want people to follow you? Maybe there's just the ego thing. You just really want to get quickly up to this higher level. And I got to be honest, I struggle with this. Everyone else struggles with this. But it's not a matter of tweaking it to make sure it's perfect. It's a matter of keeping it tame to say, I need to make progress more towards humility than pride, more towards actually being more geared to other people than wanting to lead. So back to the answer, I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it could be a really good thing. It could be a sign of health, actually, to skip steps and just say, hey, you get promoted. And a lot of times, as Christians, we get promoted past what we're capable of, and then all of a sudden, God literally needs to intervene. I'm doing that right now. I'll just be honest. I am leading at a place where it's way beyond my capacity. Every single day I wake up, I say, God, you need to show up or this whole thing is going to be a wreck. So there could be a lot of faith in it. And maybe that's just God orchestrating some good steps.
I love that you bring it back to the heart. That's such good wisdom. We actually had to cross compare Saul versus David, and you look at their rise to leadership themselves. It was clear that Saul had the exterior, but not the interior, while David clearly had the interior motivations, that heart that was right.
Yeah.
And it was clear whom God favored,
That's good.
whose kingdom lasted. So
Yeah.
I love it. Our second question.
Yeah.
How do you lead when you have both Christians and non-believers in the same environment?
Yeah. So I think there's it's not a caveat. What's the word I'm looking for? There's an adage out there that people say you got to lead equally. You got to treat everybody the same. And that's definitely just not true. You can't treat everybody the same because they're not the same. And when it comes to rewards and also consequences and discipline, it's the same. You wouldn't treat your children the same. Now, there's the same standards. There's similar guardrails that you allow in your workplace and with your kids. But at the same time, you can't treat them individually because their gift mix is different. Their personality is different. What they're supposed to be doing is different. So you treat them uniquely. Customization is always an amazing thing to happen in your workplace. As a boss, what you're trying to do is make a system that actually allows the health for everybody, staff, customers, anybody that you come in contact with. But whenever that system, I heard Seth Godin speak on this as well, whenever that system actually goes against the primary purpose of your company, which hopefully is people, then you're losing. In other words, if we use an example of a bookstore, if somebody comes up and says, hey, I'm looking for this book, you don't have it now, but can you maybe mail it to me or ship it to me or let me know when it comes in? And they say, actually, our policy is we can't order anything. Sorry, we can't do that. When your policy gets in the way of actually serving people, your system is just not working. And so when we get back to this particular idea, I think it's just really, really healthy to just kind of consider who is actually in front of you, Christian or non-Christian. And like James says, we shouldn't say, well, this one's a Christian, so I need to treat them a little bit better, a little more kindly. This person's not a Christian, so you treat them as the world treats them. I'm not talking about that unique expression. I'm actually talking sometimes where you would treat them opposite. You'd be a little bit more strict because you know this guy's a man of faith. To say, hey, this is where we need to go. The standard needs to be a little bit higher. But on this side over here, the grace, the leniency on somebody that's not a Christian is going to be extended maybe because you want to show them the love of God. But if you just blanket it right out front and you just say, hey, I'm just going to cookie cutter it. It's going to be a system. It's going to be a policy driven. And you just treat everybody the same. They're not really receiving what they need. So some Christians maybe need to be built up. Maybe they just have a difficulty of complacency. We'll spur them on. But maybe this guy that doesn't know Jesus needs to find the love of God inside of you as a boss. But he also needs to have some grace and some guidelines to help assist him. So it's really, I honestly believe it's a customization. If you know your people, if you can discern what they need and what they really are going to work well at, you put them in that situation and you deal with them, both rewards and disciplines, depending on their uniqueness.
That's good. I get another question that just came in. It's how do you stay motivated when you are a leader, yet your employer is not doing right by their employees?
Yeah. So if you're stuck in the middle, maybe you're a mid-level manager, your boss is not really paving the way for a great culture, and you're just trying to survive in waters. So one of the things that we actually might talk about here in the near future is how to actually create a culture where everybody else around you is not necessarily on the same page. How do you actually bring in the light into maybe a pretty dark place? Well, one of the ways that we can do that is start small, do small things that make a big impact. Like some of the things we talked about tonight, I would be really, really generous with my time, with finances. Anything that you can be generous with, I would be generous with that. I'd be generous with my words. I think one of the things that they're really to get is to catch a vision and a hope for what that culture really could be. And then I would start to instill that culture in the environment, whether it's staff meetings or whether maybe just small conversations, whatever it is. I would start to impress that into the culture, and then honestly, what I would do is go to the boss and just have a sit down with them. Hey, this is what I'm hoping for. I want to better our culture. I want to provide a healthy culture where people can actually love coming to work and they get a lot out of it. They get poured back into it. It's an encouraging place. Maybe just paint the picture. And honestly, sometimes what you can do is actually go to another company that's doing a really, really good job at that, or just use the internet. You can go online and find another company that's doing a really, really good job at that. And then you can just say, hey, what if we take a little bit of this, brought it into our company, and we could just blow it up? And these are kingdom principles. I mean, you can just take, just godly principles, and you don't even have to put reference them on them. You don't even have to say these are from the Bible. But if they're people honoring, if they honor God, if they develop one another, if you're better at their work, then that's going to be something that really gives honor back to God. So I think there's a few things. Start small, talk to your boss, go to another company, see what that cultures look like, and just get a dose of like, hey, you know what? We could actually do this and bring it back, and then start to get some people on the same page. Although how difficult it may be, though we just talked about that, as difficult as that may be, the leadership might be lonely. You might feel like you're the only one here, but keep pressing in because changing the culture is definitely not going to be easy, and it's not going to happen overnight. It's a process.
That's really good. I saw a similar question come up in a book. It's a short read, Monday Morning Leadership.
Yeah.
I would definitely recommend that book. It talks about managing that relationship with your boss. Because a lot of times you want to help them be successful too. It's going to overall help everyone. So your employees will look to you as a leader to manage that relationship with your own personal boss. So great stuff so far. Our next question. We obviously can't sacrifice competency as we seek character. So as a leader, how do you balance these two?
Yeah. I think the balance is that both get worked on. I think the simple answer is I just really feel like we need to be really good at what we do. I shared this a few weeks ago on a Sunday morning during a message, and I said, my theory is Jesus' carpenter shop was the best carpenter shop in town. And I can't help but think that there's a little bit of God's heart in that for your company, for your work, for your employee, for your place of influence, is just to be the best. It has a clean atmosphere. It's focused on the right things. You do your job really well. You're super efficient. Your quality and your standard is just something to be grasped. It's like royalty walking into a business. I mean, you don't have to do everything to the nines. You don't have to do everything excellent. You have to do everything in an exuberant manner. But when you look at that, when you look at the company, you have a culture that's being formed there. And I think if we're just really, really good at what we do, it allows a little bit of projection to say their competency and their skill is really good. And like I said before, allow for a little bit of time with your team for creativity to develop a little bit. Because I think when you allow margin, you start to think about the future, how the people and the product of your company can come together and you guys can dream of a better future. And when you do that, you start thinking outside the box. How can we actually make things simpler internally so that we can have a better reach externally? And when those types of conversation goes up, you know that your employees, even on the fringe, are actually having buy-in to make your company better. And I think that's such a good conversation to start having, is just to provoke that idea. Just stretch out some time to have some fun together. Think of the future so that your skill, your craftsmanship, your product, whatever it is, can get better. And so that the other one can actually get better. If your skill gets better, your competency gets better, you also want to work on the character. And when the character gets better, both of them are actually just moving up. They're progressing. Like we talked about, it's not perfection, it's just progression. And so when we look at both of those, I think that the healthy part to look at is that they're connected and that both of them are growing. You can deal with them individually. You can go over here with a good company, with good people, a small group, just some mentors, some Paul figures in your life, and actually allow them to speak in your life about your character. But at the same time, if it doesn't pour into your work, it's not really doing a whole lot of good. That's where James says, faith is amazing, but faith without deeds, that's just dead. So faith, do you believe in God? Yes. Well, display it in what you do at work. It should be displayed at work. So I think both of them, need to be looked at. Both of them need to be progressed, but they also need to be connected too.
That's so perfect. I know God's working in this conversation because it actually leads directly into our next question.
Come on.
So the next question we have is, as leaders, how do we share Jesus in our secular workplace?
Yeah. So, definitely tie in. So, first of all, I would answer the question just like I answered the other one. I think that our product needs to display who God is. What we're doing, our workspace and the product that's coming from our workspace also needs to just portray the difference of I love some Jesus and it's being displayed in my work. I shared this before, but I think it's so beneficial to do again. Our work, actually, Martin Luther made me think about this. I think he said something too. If you're a shoemaker, you don't need to put a cross on the bottom of your shoe. You don't need to put an ichthus on the bottom of your shoe to let the people know that this shoe is made by a Christian shoemaker. What you need to do is make that shoe so good that when you hand it off to people, it's not like any other shoe company. It's good, it's quality, it's excellent, but it's a little bit different. It's thinking a little past their time. Whatever the case may be, it's innovative, it's creative, it's to a point where you can hold the product that comes from your work environment and say, this is actually really, really good. But then the second one, you make decisions that actually just allow for trust in the environment. You make decisions, you speak of things that speak of your character. You give examples that just talk about the depth of your soul. You can always tell when there are people that talk and that have more to say under the surface. And I love that. The people that actually say things or speak about wisdom, and you can just feel the weightiness to their words. They don't speak often, but when they do, there's a weightiness to their words. They're great listeners. And I think that when you have those two working in the environment, I think that there's going to be a curiosity on everyone's shoulder to say, how are you so good at what you do? How are you so good at relating to everyone? All I'm doing is mentioning biblical principles. Paul says, I'm going to be all things to all people. What happens if we do that in the work environment? And the excellency and the quality. We're not supposed to work for man, but we're supposed to work for God. What happens when that quality hits the things that we do? And so I think when we look at that question, there's so many practical things that we can go back to. But honestly, I think the big one is to just be the example. The adage is be the change that you actually want to see. If we can do that at work in the environment that there's tension and there's difficulty and there's guidelines and there's agendas to be done. I think if you can do that in the work environment, you're going to set a great example. I mean, I don't want to oversimplify things, but if you go into the restaurant business and just be positive and there's no drugs being used, there's no cussing in the back, I mean, you're gonna provide a restaurant like nobody else. I mean, unfortunately, the restaurant is known for that industry, but what if yours would be different? The car industry sometimes gets a bad rap. What if you go into a car industry that's honest? There's integrity there. They go above and beyond what you ask them for, and they do a great job, and their customer service is actually better than the product that's leaving their lot. Whatever the case may be, I think there's really something to this, to dig down for A, return satisfaction for customers, and 2, for people to start talking. Hey, I'm going there for my product, but there's a reason for it, and I wonder what it is. When people start digging, this is where I'm going to leave you with this answer. When people start digging on you, on your skill or your character, when people start digging on why you do what you do, there's a verse in 1 Peter 3. It says, be ready to share the hope that's within you. And that verse is only relevant if they come to you and inquire why you are what you're doing. how you're actually working differently, why you speak differently. If you're not speaking differently, if you don't work differently, no one's going to ask you that question. And if no one's asking you that question, 1 Peter 3 is actually not even relevant. Then you can't even say, here's the hope that I have. But if some people say, Thomas, I love your work ethic. You keep getting promoted. What's your secret? Let me just have some lunch with you. What's the deal? You're getting promoted past me, or you're getting more work done than I am. People want to work on your team. What's the deal? If I don't inquire of that, if there's nothing different about you, I'm just working along the same path as everybody else.
That's so good. I talked about the Bible about if you light a lamp, you don't put it under a basket. It's going to be clearly be seen that you have a light. That Jesus said, you are the light of the world. If your quality, or if your product, your service, that everything's going to reflect God, that's no brainer. You're going to be asked these questions.
Yeah.
If I could just go a step further, I
Yep.
love what you're saying. Pray up. Like if you really want to see Jesus in your workplace, you got to be in prayer. I've worked at Sly Fox for over two years, and I've invited so many people to tell them about Jesus, and there's been like zero fruit. And just after so much time, it's really cool how God He brought something to take
Yeah.
place. Now we have people come into grace, and
Yeah.
just praying, just continue to pray for that workplace. Pray before you go in. Pray
Yeah.
while you're there.
Definitely.
Pray after you leave. Just be
Yeah.
soaked in the
Yeah.
presence of God, and
Yeah.
that's going to be brought into your workplace.
Yeah. So good.
Well, that's so good. I think it's all the time we have for
Yeah,
questions.
that's it. Let's wrap it up. You got some announcements. Let them know about some stuff coming up.
Yes, I'm excited for this. So our next LeadStep Online, get your calendars ready, get them out. It's going to be coming up Monday, April 23rd, same time, 8 p.m. Convenience of your home. You just can't beat it. Log on, so easy. And then we have a huge event. This is going to be amazing. Talking about bringing Jesus into the city, into the community, to your workplaces, and the best way to do it is going to be serving the city. We're going to have this come up May 5th. It's going to be your chance to get out there and be a part of what's going on in Moore County.
So big.
Love it. And then super excited. This is the best part.
Come on.
We have Easter. It's finally come. It's
Yes.
finally here. April 1st. It's not a joke. It's actually going to be Easter. We have quite a few different service
Yep.
times. So the Pines will be 8:15, 9:30, 11 o'clock, 12:30.
12:30.
Go ahead and do us a favor as our leaders, our core people. If you can go to the first or the fourth service, that's going to help make some room and some seats for the people that really honestly need to get here and
Yep.
hear the gospel.
Yep.
And then at our amazing campus, Seven Lakes,
7 Lakes.
we're going to have 9:30 and 11 o'clock. You got two different options for you
Yep.
out there.
So good. So good.
Well, it's been excellent, Ryan. You
It
want to
has.
say a quick prayer and bless them as we go out?
Absolutely. Thank you guys so much for joining. Let me pray for you guys and we're going to close. Father, we thank you so much for our time. God, we ask for all the business leaders, the CEOs, the managers, the mid-level managers, the employees, the employers that are watching, the stay-at-home moms, the students, the military, the medical, and every single area that you are extending your kingdom. Father, we pray a blessing that all may go well with you, that you will be in good health as it goes well with your soul. Father, we ask that you would bless them, be with them. In Jesus' name we pray. We love you guys, and we'll see you guys next time.
Y'all take care.